David, the meeting is now being recorded and everyone from the lobby has been admitted.
Thank you. Thank you, Liana. Welcome everyone to the Northern Beaches Local Planning Panel meeting for Wednesday, the 15th of May. This is the public component of the meeting, and we have 3 items that we're dealing with in the public component. Before I start, we've got a number of people present who may or may not have attended a panel meeting before. So I'll just give a quick rundown of the functions of the panel, and then I'll formally commence the meeting agenda. Firstly, the local planning panels, such as this one, were made mandatory for all Sydney councils and Wollongong councils back in 2018, and that was a mandate from the state government. There's someone with a bit of wind noise there. If they could turn their microphone off, that would be really helpful, please. In summary, the panels aim to provide an increased level of accountability and ensure independent oversight leads to better planning outcomes. The function of the panels are to provide an independent and open forum for interested people and groups to hear and make submissions about development proposals that have been referred to the panel for determination, for the panel to consider and determine development applications, application modifications, and reviews of applications that have been referred to it, and also to make recommendations to council on planning proposals and any other development matter that may be referred to the panel. There are statutory rules that govern the panel's operations through a code of conduct and operational procedures, and they are available on council's website. Council officers still assess a development application in the normal way, and then they report to the local planning panel. And that's the written report that you all would have seen and which is available on council's website. The panel then makes an independent determination of the application. One thing that's really important to note is the panel does not set policy, but works within the legal framework and the planning policy set by council, the state government, as well as court decisions. The panel's members, there are 4 members that attend each panel meeting: a chairperson, which is myself, and I'll introduce myself in a moment, a community member, and 2 independent expert members. The expert members have got expertise in urban design, planning, or some other related field, and the community members are representatives of the local community but don't need to be an expert in any particular field. The format we follow is that the panel receives a copy of the council's report, which is the agenda for this meeting, as well as having access to all the submissions and supporting information that's provided by the applicant and submissions from the public as well. The panel members then do an inspection of the site, either electronically or in person, depending on the circumstances. Then we hold the public panel meeting, which is the one we're present at now. And then we then go into closed session for the panel to deliberate on the proposals that have been referred to us. And then a public announcement is made of the determination, usually a few days later, once the formalities have been dealt with. Prior to the panel meeting, we have been briefed by council's assessment team if we've got any queries and so on. The public meetings that we're in at the moment, they provide an opportunity to make an oral submission. They're not an opportunity for debate or to and fro discussion between the applicant and the objectors. Basically, they're an opportunity for people to make the panel more informed about issues which are very important to the person making the presentation. The public meetings are video and audio recorded. I don't think we're live streaming at the moment, but certainly the recording will be available on the council's website. And that's a pretty quick rundown of the panel and how it operates. So just to formally commence the meeting, I'd like to acknowledge country. As a sign of respect, the Northern Beaches Planning Panel, or local planning panel rather, acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands upon which we gather and pays respect to elders past, present and emerging. I haven't received any apologies for the meeting, and my understanding is that there are no declarations of interest, but just out of thoroughness, I'll just ask the panel members. So the panel today is myself, David Crofts, I'm the chair, and I have no conflicts of interest in relation to items on today's agenda. Heather Wharton is an independent expert. Heather, do you have any conflicts?
No, David, I have no conflicts.
Right, thank you. David Epstein is also an independent expert member. David, any conflicts?
No conflicts.
Right, thank you very much. And Caroline Hill is our community member at this meeting. Caroline, do you have any conflicts with this meeting?
No, no conflicts.
Great, thank you very much. And the members have also submitted a written confirmation in relation to any interest that they may have. As I mentioned, I don't have any apologies for the meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting, which was held on the 1st of May, just need to note that the minutes of the meeting were adopted by the chairperson, which just happens to be myself, and have been posted on council's website. That brings us to item 4.1 of the agenda, which is DA 2023/0776, 165 Condamine Street, Balgowlah. That DA relates to demolition works and construction of an attached dual occupancy, including a strata subdivision. I don't have any speakers in relation to that item. Is that the case? You're not aware of any other ones I don't have on my list, Liana?
No, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay, that being the case, we might move on now to item 4.2. And for item 4.2 is DA 2023/1629, 20 Plant Street, Balgowlah, which is demolition works and construction of a new attached dual occupancy, including subdivision of one lot into two and associated works. I have 3 speakers that are registered. Someone representing objectors, which is Andrew Beattie, and 2 people on behalf of the applicant, Ibrahim Mustafa, and also Joe Melham. They're the only ones that you have registered, Liana?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you very much. And just a bit of advice to the speakers. I try and keep your presentations down to about 3 minutes if possible. So if you can be concise. We have had the opportunity of reading the submissions, so there's no need to repeat them word for word. It's an opportunity, however, for you to get across what you think are the major points to us. And if you could try and keep your presentation down to about 3 minutes, would be most grateful. So I'll take the objectors speaker first. Andrew Beattie, I can see you're online, Andrew, and you've taken your microphone off mute. Thank you. So we're in your hands, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the other members of the panel for the opportunity to address you today. I appear before you on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Les Ryan, who are the owners of 18 Plant Street, which is the property adjoining the subject site. And they object to this development proposal, which in their view and in my view represents a substantial and unneighbourly overdevelopment of that land. If after hearing from any other speakers in respect of this development application, other issues are raised or fresh issues are raised, including by the panel, we'd seek a very short right of reply. Panel members, this DA ought to be refused for the reasons which are set out in our letter to Council of the 29th of April. I gather from inquiries that have been made on my behalf that our letter to Council of the 29th of April is not referenced in Council's assessment report, and I wonder if the panel has that letter before them. If it doesn't have that letter before them, I'm very happy to make a copy available to the panel subsequent to delivering these remarks.
Okay, we'll just need to confirm that. I know we've received correspondence, but in terms of the date,
Very good.
we'll have to confirm
That's
that. Thank you.
that's okay, Mr.
But we'll
Chairman.
check that. Thank you.
Our letter of the 29th in turn refers to our client's detailed submissions of the 6th of December last year and the additional material provided by my client's planner, Ms. Shepherd, in her emails, especially her email to Council of the 15th of February. In its consideration of this DA, which panel members would be aware, Council itself recommends for refusal on 16 different grounds, we ask the panel to take into account the following three matters in particular. First, assuming that this is still an application for a Torrens title subdivision, there's no clause 4.6 exemption application seeking to justify the very significant departure from the minimum lot size requirements. Even if there was such an application before you, we'd submit that the departure is too great to overcome the shortfall, a shortfall which defeats the objectives of that part of the planning instrument dealing with minimum lot sizes. The 4.6 exemption application concerning height fails to address recent changes to the height of the proposed development, and it fails to demonstrate why compliance with the height control is unreasonable or unnecessary in the circumstances, or why there are sufficient environmental planning grounds to justify that contravention. There is no clause 4.6 exemption application for the FSR exceedance. In our view, therefore, the DA must be refused. Second point we'd make to the panel is that even if the panel is persuaded that the DA is prima facie approvable, it is in our view so unmeritorious that it ought to be refused on merit grounds, and these are described in detail in the materials already before you. Thirdly, and by specific reference to my client's land, the topography of the site and the precinct of which it forms part gives rise to particular risks concerning stormwater runoff and potential geotechnical instability, and it will clearly result in substantially reduced amenity for our clients, given both overlooking and overshadowing. None of these impacts in our submission has been properly understood or analysed by the proponent. In our view, the panel can have no confidence, based on the materials before it now, that this development will not, firstly, exacerbate runoff problems already being experienced by our clients, secondly, pose risk to our clients' lift, or thirdly, seriously erode the amenity of our clients given the overlooking which will occur given the design and proximity of these new dwellings or proposed new dwellings, as well as the overshadowing of parts of our client's property. So for those reasons, we urge the panel to refuse the DA if it finds that it is capable of even assessing the DA. If that is the outcome of today's consideration by the panel, we would ask that, given this is not the first attempt to redevelop this land, that any grounds for refusal be used to inform any new future development application. And with respect, panel members, they are our submissions, and if you don't have a copy of our letter of the 29th of April, if you could let us know that at some stage, and that will be provided to you today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity of addressing you.
Thank you very much, Andrew Beattie. What I generally do, just for the benefit of yourself and the applicant's representatives, is if we've got any questions, I'll leave them right to the end after the applicant's got an opportunity to make a presentation. So if you could just stay online, that would be great. Now, just see, we've got Cedar Designs. I assume that's Ibrahim Mustafa is online.
Hello.
And yes, you're on. And is Joe Mellum, I can see you're online as well. Ibrahim, I might leave it up to you. I'm not sure whether both of you are planning to make a presentation or just yourself. So I'll let you act as the coordinator.
Sure.
So we're in your hands, please.
Yep. You guys can hear me clearly?
We can. Thank you very much.
Hope you guys are having a good morning. In relation to the application for 20 Plant Street, Balgola, I'm the applicant and architect for the proposal. We've reviewed council's concerns in relation to the application, and we do understand that council has put up the application with a recommendation for refusal. for a number of reasons, I should say. Once we were notified of the concerns that council had last week, actually, we made contact with the assessing officer who's looking after the application, Nick England, to just clarify a couple of items with him. The first being floor space ratio. We had not initially sought to seek any variation to floor space ratio, and during our conversation with Nick, it was determined that the difference in the floor space ratio was due to the counting of stairs. So we were advised that the stairs should be counted on every second level, in our case 2 levels, of the development should include the staircase, whereas we had only included 1. As the panel is aware, we did submit amended plans addressing this concern last week, and we have reduced the FSR to comply with 45% on the basis of our discussion with the assessing officer last week. So we do now comply with floor space ratio and the provisions of the FSR in the Manly LEP. So that's in relation to floor space ratio. Council, as well as neighbouring dwellings, have raised concern in relation to the height limit. We had initially sought to seek a variation to the overall height limit of about 0.5 metre or so. Council was not supportive of that variation, and we do understand that this led to a bit of concern from the neighbouring dwellings. And obviously, we're not here to put neighbours in any ugly position or make them unhappy. So we have actually also amended the building height to comply with the height limit in the latest plans that we have submitted to council, and we now comply with the 8.5 height limit prescribed by council's LEP and all the provisions in relation to height in the LEP. We are still seeking a variation to the wall height. However, council's DCP does mention that we can seek a variation to the wall height if we comply with other items such as the overall height limit, especially given that we do have a excessively sloping block down to the rear with some significant site constraints. So we now comply with 2 items, which was the FSR and height limit. We now comply with in terms of those items. Front setback was another concern raised by council. We had initially proposed a 4.6 metre front setback, which has now been amended to 6. The DCP does, however, say that the minimum front setback shall be prevailing with the streetscape. And if we were to analyse the street, the majority of the street is either between a 2 or 3 metre setback or even a nil setback. So we believe that we did comply with the minimum setback at the front. However, we have still amended our proposal to comply with the minimum 6 metre setback that council has requested. And that was also in our latest submission to council and the panel last week. As for the subdivision, we'd understand that council raised concern that we had initially intended to do a Torrens title subdivision. This has since changed, and we do intend to do a strata subdivision, to which the minimum lot size no longer applies under the LEP, which says this clause doesn't apply in relation to subdivision of land by the registration of a strata plan or strata plan of subdivision. So we do now comply with the LEP in relation to subdivision. Brings me to my second issue, which was the dwelling density of the DCP. Council has a dwelling density requirement which requires a minimum of 500 per lot. We understand that we are seeking a variation to the DCP in relation to this. However, if we were to analyze the street, we are not seeking to construct anything that's out of the ordinary in the area. Given that 7 Plant Street, Balgola has 3 multi-dwelling units with a total site area of 653 square meters, which is well under the minimum 500 per dwelling. 16 Plant Street, Balgola has 3 units at 950 square meters. 10 Plant Street, Balgola has 1 dwelling and only has a site area of 400 square meters. 19 Ethel Street, Balgola is a dual occupancy with 630 square meters. 9 Maritimo Street, which is just behind us or in front of us, has residential flat buildings at only 550 square meters. 11 Maritimo Street, Balgola, is a dual occupancy at 515 square meters. And number 15 Maritimo is multi-dwelling units with 4 dwellings at 160. And these are all just examples surrounding our site, all of which don't comply with the 500 square meters per lot under the DCP. So we don't believe that we are seeking any significant variation to council's DCP in this regard. And despite the variation that we are seeking, we believe we comply with the desired future character of the area based on what's already happening around the subject site. And we wish that the panel...
You're heading up to, in fact, you're over time by a couple of minutes. So
Yep.
can you
I'll just have 2 last
sure.
items.
Yes, please.
And this was shadowing. Just quickly, we comply with the minimum 3-hour shadows required to all adjoining dwellings of council's DCP, and that's especially due to the fact that the site is north facing. So we don't have any variation in relation to shadowing that the neighbours have raised. In relation to stormwater, we understand that the neighbours had raised concern about stormwater, and although this was a tricky procedure, we were able to negotiate terms and conditions for a drainage easement with the rear lot, which is number 10 Harbourview Street. And we have been able to provide council with a copy of that letter and the panel. And if council was, and should the panel grant a deferral or additional time in relation to stormwater, we will also be able to address all the stormwater concerns raised by both council and the neighbours, due to the fact that we've been able to negotiate a drainage easement with the rear dwelling. Finally, there was concerns about view loss. We know that our dwelling is known, now that we comply with our height limits, we are no longer significantly different in height to any of the adjoining dwellings. So in terms of view loss, we're not seeking to have any variation in terms of view loss, or we don't believe that our proposal will affect the view loss of any of the dwellings adjacent to the lot. So we wish that the panel would take all of these items into consideration, considering that we've made a number of adjustments up, and we believe that the application is sufficient for an approval on these bases.
Okay, thank you very much. Joe Millam, are you planning to say anything, or is Mustafa's presentation cover that off, please?
No, I think Mustafa's presentation has definitely covered it off. I mean, my main concern was, the view loss. I mean, we're only 1 story. We're only 1 story from the front. Everybody around us is 2 to 3 stories. Number 18 is 2 stories at the front, and they're well above our height limits where we're at. So I mean, we're not going to be, and the people, everybody around us is higher than us. We're below them, so there is no view loss from the front or the rear from our property. So that's stormwater situation has been taken care of. As you know, we've been able to get an easement, which is a big factor. So I think from what Mustafa has presented, I think you should be able to, I think it complies, and we should be able to get a DA, and hopefully you can see that. And please, I just want to move in, just want to move into one, and I've been renting for a couple of years. I just want to get in there. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Now, panel members, are there any questions or points of clarification you'd like to make? If you can just raise your hand, please, so that I don't have everyone speaking at once. Or so, no questions or anything like that. I just had a couple, if I could, Mustafa.
Sure, go ahead.
One of them related to stormwater. You mentioned that you had a letter relating to an easement to the property downstream of yourselves.
Yep.
I noticed in the assessment report it refers to an analysis of stormwater and the need to provide more information for the engineers.
Yes.
And wondering has that been done particularly in relation to the functioning of the easement and how that whole system might work?
Not yeah. So we had a bit of a delay negotiating with the neighbour.
Yes.
In relation to the easement, there was a bit of back and forth between the owner of number 20 Plant Street and the rear neighbours. And they were finally able to come to an agreement a couple of weeks ago, which was way after we had submitted our amended architectural plans to council. So because we still weren't sure what pathway we were going to take in relation to stormwater, we hadn't yet been able to address council's concern in relation to stormwater sufficiently. But given that the rear neighbour has now agreed to do so, we are in a position to be able to address those items should the panel grant us a deferral or additional time to do so. We believe that we can sufficiently address all of council's concerns in relation to stormwater now that the easement is going to be a part of our proposal. So a large chunk of council's concern in relation to that has been addressed.
Can I say something as well, if you don't mind, David?
Who's that speaking? Sorry,
Joe.
Joe.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Joe. You must be on twice because I can see your name, but you're through on mobile as well. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Nick England did mention that he preferred us to be able to hold water on site and to go into an easement. Originally, we looked at an OSB tank to flow into to the easement. Now that we've been given the approval for an easement, now we'll look at complying or working with Nick England in regards to how he wanted us to work an OSD tank flowing into the easement. So we have been in discussion with that in that regard.
Okay, and in relation to views, you mentioned views. I couldn't find any view analysis or view loss analysis in the SCE or a separate document. Can you just help me a little bit there, please?
So council had requested a view analysis from us. That was based on if we were still going to seek a height limit variation. However, given that we now comply with the height limits, council said that we weren't required to submit one. However, if the panel is of the view that they would like us to submit one with amended plans and documents along with our stormwater matters, we are also willing to do so if the panel was to grant us a deferral or additional time to do so. That's a very simple matter, especially since we are only a single story and quite similar to what the existing dwelling on site is. We are willing to submit a detailed analysis of view for the view loss for the site.
And also, you did email to council some amended plans. Only a day or so ago.
Yes.
Have they been uploaded on the portal?
Yes, as per council's request, we have gone ahead and uploaded them to the portal as well. Yes.
And your other documentation, have you amended those to take into account some of the changes that you, one made on the plans, but two are in that accompanying memo?
So we've made the changes on the plans. We still need to provide amended stormwater plans.
Yes.
Along with amended statement of environmental effects.
Yes.
And that would be all part of our final submission when we come back with amended stormwater plans, and all the other items would be covered accordingly.
So there's not an amended SCE that's been lodged, or some amended details of the development that have been lodged that sort of reflect?
Yes, definitely. We actually did have a separate letter that was attached in the planning portal. And that was titled response letter under the items category other, and that has been attached with the submission of the amended plans to highlight the changes that we have made to council. We have made on the plans to council in the panel.
But you haven't changed the description on the, have you, or and in terms of what the development is on the portal other than in that letter. Is that correct?
No. So the description in the portal is the demolition of existing structures.
Yes.
And construction of a two-story dual occupancy with a subdivision.
Mhm.
The subdivision in our case is now amended to be a strata subdivision. Of
Right.
course. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Heather.
Just following up on David's questions, you'll have to lodge an amended plan showing your draft plan of strata subdivision. You haven't done that yet, have you?
We have actually consulted with our surveyors to prepare those. They are in the process of being prepared. Council was initially happy with just the architectural updated subdivision plan. However, we are also in the process of preparing one by a registered surveyor, which we can have submitted as part of all the other amended documents as well.
Thanks.
And the reasons for refusal include other issues regarding insufficient information, such as the bulk and scale addressing the foreshore seating protection area, the
Yep.
solar access for windows and private open space, the privacy from the alfresco area, and so on.
Yes.
And also, I thought there was a geotech issue as well. The wall height. Yeah, and the drawings don't have many sections. It's very hard. The site's quite steep and difficult, or the topography is difficult. There's not a lot of information on the plans to really understand the heights. And I think we do have a concern about the height shown on your sections, whether that's accurate or not in terms of the topography as it falls from the street, because it seems to fall quite more steeply than is drawn on your sections.
Yep.
So you might want to look at that if you are putting in some further amended drawings.
Yes, that's where I'm happy to provide additional cross sections and long sections going through the proposal. And in terms of the privacy concerns, council had raised concerns in relation to privacy. Yes, especially from the rear alfresco. There's two things to note, and the balcony is on the first floors. There's two things to note, that the alfresco has dropped now even lower to the natural ground line because we have dropped the building height. But aside from that, we have also incorporated privacy screening along the sides of those balconies in order to address those concerns from council had. So we believe we have covered those items. However, should the panel request any further information from us in relation to those matters, then we are also willing to do so. Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. David Epstein.
Yes, thanks. Thanks, David, and thank you, Ibrahim, for your explanation and presentation. I just wanted to make a point about the sections, that when you're doing any sections, particularly the cross sections through the property, these really should be extended into the neighbouring properties. It's very hard to gauge all the levels associated with the site, but also how they relate to the surrounding properties. And I think that part of the issue that a lot of people are having with looking at this development is understanding how all the levels work, given that it's such a complex site. So when you're doing your sections and even your plans as well, they really need to extend beyond the boundaries. At the moment, you've just cut the sections and the plans as if it's just an isolated site, but it's not. It's surrounded by all these very tricky areas. So please show them as much as you can.
That's not a problem.
And that would help to understand all the a lot of these issues to do with heights and views and overshadowing, etc.
For sure, that's definitely not an issue for us. And that's something we're willing to put into the plans as well, to further clarify all of those items to council.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from panel members? No. Now, Andrew Beattie, I noticed we've got your hand up. Something you need to note is with the panel, it's not an opportunity for debate with the applicant. If you want to make a comment, okay, no. If you want to make a comment that actually relates to the objection, additional comment, that I'll accept that.
It's a 1 minute comment, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay.
It's a 1 minute comment arising out of the discussion.
Sorry, Andrew, if If Andrew, if you did have any further questions for me outside of the panel, I'm more than happy for you to also contact me directly after this meeting if you would like that.
Okay, thank you, Mustafa. Andrew, your comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's disappointing that the proponent's only now been driven to make these concessions after reviewing the council officer's assessment report. This development application is plainly still a very unfinished work in progress. Not only are the current drawings inadequate based on comments I've heard from the panel members, but there are new documents, other documents yet to be created, yet to be exhibited. And we would have thought that in those circumstances, it really would be appropriate for the panel to refuse this development application and give the proponent an opportunity to prepare and exhibit one that does respond appropriately to the controls and the need for proper documentation. If the panel doesn't want to do that and does want to give the proponent more opportunity to supply more material, they can.
I mean, the panel will make a decision based on its own independent views, and I understand what you're saying, but
understood, Mr. Chairman. That's all I wish to say.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So that's the end of this particular item. So thank you again to the presenters. We move on now to item 4.3, which is 550 Sydney Road, Seaforth, which is the installation of an EV charge station. We only have one speaker, which is Scott Baines from Jolt. Scott, I can see you're on the line. Thank you. I'll just ask, do you want to make a presentation or would you prefer just to take questions and answers from the panel?
Mr. Chairman, look, here just in the capacity to answer any questions that relate to, the technical component of what we are proposing in this development application. So, yeah, not intending to make a presentation.
Okay, we did have one question that actually doesn't relate to the DA per se and our considerations on the DA. It was a curiosity one, is to why you only went for one charging station rather than looking at putting two in.
Yeah, that's a great question. So the agreement that Jolt has with Ausgrid to convert their kiosk substations into EV chargers has been designed to accommodate two EV chargers. In this instance, we're proposing one, but it does have that future optionality to upgrade to two. So just one 25 kilowatt charger is what we felt was an appropriate proposal in this locality, in the local context. We also, I'll just note, we also only have approval from Council's local traffic committee to convert one parking bay for EV charging. So over time, what we do is monitor utilisation and demand in the area. And if there is a need to upgrade or install a second charger in future in the adjacent car park, we can do so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that clarification. Panel members, any questions at all? Comments? No? That'll, yes, David. Your microphone's,
sorry. Thanks. Scott, you might be able to just clarify one question we had in our discussion was around the modification to that existing facility next to the footpath. To what extent would it be widened and would it overlap in any way the concrete footpath that's there? I think on the drawing it shows a setback of 440 or 400 millimeters, 404 millimeters from the footpath. Does that allow for the new facility, or is that the existing?
Absolutely. So our proposal plans show the enclosure that gets installed over the top of the existing Ausgrid substation. So that's showing the finished build form and setbacks to the path. So no encroachment.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Any other comments at all?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you very much, Scott. And that's the end of item 4.3 and also the end of all of the public items for this meeting of the local planning panel. So I'd now like to formally close the meeting and thank everyone who has attended. Panel members, can you just also state